It is great to have you. Some of you I met a few months ago when I was out here. My name is Shawn. I'm a pastor friend of Rusty. And again, as I said a couple months ago, for some of us who love Rusty, that maybe earns me a few chips. For those of you who are shaky on Rusty, I'm really sorry, but I'm still good friends with him. But it really is great to be here with you this morning. I live in the Chicagoland area, and by default, it's kind of in the water. I happen to be a Chicago Bears fan. I know for some of us that's a depressing thing, but for those of us who are Bears fans, it's also a depressing thing because when it gets to playoff time, we get to watch other people's teams play because we don't get to participate in playoffs. And so because my team is completely out, and we've really been out since about week 1 of the season, I thought I would try to jump on a bandwagon if you would allow me to. I know we don't like bandwagoner fans, but are you all right if I jump on the Hawks bandwagon at least for today? And for the foreseeable future, again, because I like to cheer for some team because I don't get to cheer come playoff time. But it's great to be with you this morning. We're going to start a brand new series this morning that's called Didn't See It Coming. And there's all kinds of things in life that happen to us along the way that are pretty shared experiences that we just flat out don't see coming, although they're a very common experience. Now, as I think about this particular time of year, I thought we'd kind of kick off this series by really thinking about the positioning of this time of year. So how many of you had a good Christmas, great start to your new year? Everybody good so far? Now, I love this time of year. It actually is one of my favorite times of the year. I love this celebration of Christmas, but really it's after Christmas into this first week of the brand new year that there's a rhythm that I implemented in my life years and years ago. Because there's something about a new year that gives us an opportunity to hit the reset button. That no matter what happened in 2019 or the years leading up to, that we have the opportunity to have a fresh start, a new beginning, a blank slate. The truth is, the next year and beyond, it's an unwritten story. And so if we were really to trust God, God could write an amazing story. No matter what the previous story has been, in many ways, we're sitting on the brink of something brand new. And so every single year, as a rhythm is a part of my life, after Christmas and really into this first week of the new year, I like to make goals. I'm a very goal-setting person. I'm a pretty goal-driven person. Some people like to call these New Year's resolutions. Maybe that is what I do. But typically what I do is I very practically and tactically begin to pray through goals in 4 different areas of my life. And I thought that I would just share with you this kind of practical rhythm, and maybe it could serve you in your own life as well. And I think about these 4 different areas. I think about, if God were to allow me to dream a big dream or to have some sort of vision for the future, what would that look like and how would that play out personally, professionally, spiritually, and financially? And so I really literally spend some time with Jesus and really just ask that particular question. It's not just about what do I dream. The question becomes, what is God dreaming for my life? What vision would God want to paint a picture in my own life? And again, I pray through that in each one of those categories. I start thinking about it personally. And so that becomes the question. If God were to dream a big dream for your life personally, what would that dream look like? Maybe for some of us, we want to shed a few pounds. Maybe we want to get into good shape. Maybe this is the year we're going to run a 5K race or a half marathon. Or maybe we have far bigger personal goals in mind. Maybe it's a relational goal that for some of us, we've been dating for quite some time, and this is the year that that commitment gets solidified, and this is the year that we get married. Or maybe for others of us, God has put a vision on our heart to become a foster parent, or maybe to adopt a child. My understanding around here at LifePoint, there are quite a few foster parents, and it's one of the issues that really is near and dear to our hearts. My understanding, Rusty, there's a meeting on January 17th. Is that right? If you're interested in learning more, if that's something that God has placed on your heart, we'd love to partner with you to help that vision become a reality. But the question becomes, if you were to allow yourself to dream, what dream might God have for you personally? What dream might God have for you professionally? For some of us, maybe it's a promotion we have our eye on. Maybe for others of us, we want to think about a career change. And so this is the year we go back to school or we get that new skill set necessary to take that leap. Or maybe God gave birth to a dream in our heart to start something brand new. Maybe a brand new business or brand new endeavor. We've always thought about it. It's always been a part of our story, but it requires so much risk. We've never had the courage, and maybe this will be the year that we finally have enough courage to take the leap of faith and we go for it. We're not only going to dream the big dream, we're going to trust that God will bring that dream to fruition. But if you were to dream God-sized dreams, what would that look like for you in this coming year? Not only personally, professionally, what would that look like spiritually? You know, maybe for some of us, from a spiritual perspective, it's about spending more time with the Lord. And so we're going to commit to some sort of Bible reading plan or carving out a specific amount of time each and every day or 5 times a week in order to spend a little bit more prayerful time with God. Or maybe for some of us, it's about making the decision for the very first time to surrender ourselves to God. And maybe, this is the year that we get baptized. Or maybe it's about plugging into a ministry or using your gifts to serve in some capacity. The question becomes, if you were to allow yourself to dream and to have a vision for the future, what would it look like spiritually? And then even on a financial realm, what might that look like? For some of us, we have dreams to eradicate our debt, or we have dreams to save money for the kids' college, or maybe we have a dream to rise to a certain income level, to give away a certain amount of money. Whatever that looks like, again, that becomes the question. If you were to give yourself permission to dream and to have a vision for what could be in the future, what would that practically look like in your journey? And so I would encourage you, if you haven't yet taken those steps, I would encourage you to think about those 4 categories over the next few days and just prayerfully consider what God might have for you in each one of those areas. Here's why I do this. Here's why that's a part of my rhythm literally every single year. Because I'm convicted about this truth, and it's this. If you don't have a vision for the future, you will likely return to your past. If you don't have a vision for your future, you'll likely just do what you've always done. You'll likely revert back to that which is familiar. And so the story ahead will look a lot like what was behind us, but I believe in a God who's a God of second chances, of new opportunities, of new beginning. It doesn't matter historically what it's looked like. God can write a brand new story, but if we don't have a vision for the future, we'll likely just return to the past. Now for my entire life, I've never been able to see very well. I had my first set of glasses when I was 2 years old, and even with corrective lenses, I don't quite have 20/20 vision. But I'm praying that God gives me a vision for 2020. And I'm praying that God gives me a vision and gives you a vision for 2020 and beyond. May this be a year that is empowered by big dreams and big visions that God gives for us. And so in order to ground our conversation today, I want to talk about what does it look like to step into and to live into the vision that God has given us. And so I want to anchor our conversation in a book of the Bible, the very first book of the Bible, book of Genesis. We read about this amazing encounter that God has with this guy by the name of Abram, and God gives Abram a big dream. And God gives Abram a big vision. As we lean into Abram's story, I think there's some powerful principles that play out in Abram's story that can be applied to our own story as we see the dreams and visions that God gives us as well. And so if you got a Bible, you can turn to Genesis chapter 12. If not, no worries. The words are going to show up on the screen as well. One of the things that I like to do when it comes to reading Scripture, as the words show up on the screen, you're going to see some highlighted words. If you can help me out by just reading those highlighted words out loud with me. How about this? Don't just read them. You guys are Hawks fans. You're crazy. Shout them out with me. It helps me know that you're with me, you're engaged, and you won't be falling asleep, and I certainly won't either when you shout them out at me. It'd be great. And so here's what we learned for principles from Abram's life. If we want to step into the vision that God's given us, here's the first principle. The first principle is this. We've got to stop talking and start walking. Stop talking and start walking. Here's what we read about Abram's story. Genesis chapter 12, we're going to start at verse 1. Again, help me out with the highlighted words. It says this. It says, the Lord said to Abram, leave. That's pretty good. Leave your native country, your relatives, your father's family, and go to the land I will show you. And so basically God starts out this vision and the dream, and he says, hey, Abram, what I want you to do is I want you to leave everything that you've ever known. I want you to leave everything that's familiar, and I want you to trust me into this brand new path, this brand new direction that you've never experienced today. It's going to be full of some uncertainty. There may be some fears. It may feel a little bit crazy because I'm asking you to leave everything you've ever known. Now what's interesting is about when God says, I want you to leave your native country, Abram was from a city that was called Ur. Kind of an interesting town to be from. But Abram was from Ur, the city of Ur, U-R. And we don't know a ton about the city of Ur. We do know that it was kind of a happening place in ancient Mesopotamia. It was home to about 200,000 people. From what we know, it was a wealthy city. It was kind of a place that you'd want to go. It probably scored pretty high on TripAdvisory. It may have been, a little bit of a touristy destination. If you were to go to the city of Ur, you would have likely bought a I Heart Ur shirt. I mean, it's kind of, that kind of place. And so it's interesting for Abram, it's all that he'd ever known. It's kind of a cool place to be and to live. It's where his family was, it's where his homeland was, it's where his job was, and God says, I want you to leave everything that you've ever known, and I want you to go to a place that you've never been. And many times the visions in the God's dreams for our lives, they look very similar to that. The things that he calls us to don't necessarily look like where we've been. And so if God's calling you to start a new business, to become a foster parent, to adopt a child, to enter into a new relationship, whatever that looks like, that journey requires us to leave that which we've known and that which we understand, that's what we're familiar, and take a journey to a place that we've never been. It's full of all kinds of uncertainty, and there's all kinds of nervousness that gets associated with it. Now, what's interesting about that, as you think about it, from Abram's perspective, everything that he'd ever known was familiar, and thus everything he'd ever known had become incredibly comfortable. Now, in my life, there is nobody that I know that loves his comfort more than my youngest son, Austin. My youngest son, Austin, he's 10 years old. He loves to be comfortable. Case in point, 1 year ago when he was 9, he asked Santa for a new comfortable mattress for Christmas. What 9-year-old asks for a mattress for Christmas? My 9-year-old. He wanted it more than anything else. He's like, if I don't get any other Christmas gifts, what I want is I want to sleep in comfort at night. This year, you fast forward a whole year, what he asked for Christmas is he wanted the world's most comfortable pajamas, and he wanted the world's most comfortable blanket. My kid loves his comfort. He'll wrap himself up in multiple blankets. He calls himself the blanket king. He loves to be comfortable, right? Now, I think that there's a sense that we all kind of share Austin's heart a little bit. We all gravitate to that which is familiar because it's comfortable. We like to be comfortable at some level. Here's the challenge with comfort. You and I both know this. Comfort and growth are like the Chicago Bears and winning. They don't really go together, right? Comfort and growth, they don't really go together. Here's the truth. Growth begins where comfort ends. And that's true for all of us. That's true for all of our journeys, that the growth begins where comfort ends. And so many times the visions that God has given us, the dreams that he has for us, they require significant growth in our journey. And that growth will begin the moment that we're willing to draw an end to that which we know and that which is currently comfortable. And so it requires us to not just talk about it, but to do something about it. It's not just about expressing we want this or we desire this. We actually have to take action toward this brand new path that God might be calling us to. And that's what Abram does. If you go back to his story in Genesis chapter 12, here's what it says. In Genesis chapter 12, verse 4, it says this. It says, so Abram departed just as the Lord had instructed. And so what we know about Abram's story is it wasn't just about understanding the dream. It wasn't just about acknowledging the dream. It wasn't just about wanting this dream. It was about taking steps in the direction that God was calling. It was about the action steps that followed. It was about stop talking and to start walking. Now, the reason that's so important, I read a book years and years ago. It's written by a guy by the name of Andy Stanley. He's a pastor in the Atlanta area. He wrote this great book that's called The Principle of the Path. And in it, this book, what Stanley talks about is all of us, we have this, what we call a destination in mind. And for the sake of our conversation today, the destination we're describing is that vision or that dream or the thing that you feel called to or compelled by God to pursue, that destination. The reality of it is we won't just arrive at that destination haphazardly. We won't just wake up one morning and go, oh, I can't believe I got here. It will never happen haphazardly. It happens incredibly intentionally. And long before the destination is some place that we arrive at, there's all kinds of things that precede that destination. What he says is it all starts with your everyday decisions. It's your decisions, not your intentions. Because we can intend to do something, we can want to do something all day long, but it won't necessarily change anything. It's your actual decisions, not your intentions, that begin to create a new direction in your life. And once the direction is established, ultimately that direction is what will allow you to one day end up at that destination. And so it all starts with the decisions. Now, what's interesting about those kind of decisions is I would say it this way. Again, it's not just your decisions. Sometimes we'll think about it this way in our context. We'll say that people are product of their environment. I don't know if that's true. I'm even more convinced that people are a product of their everyday decisions. Those decisions will create a direction in our lives, and that direction will ultimately lead us to the destination. And so whatever the vision is, the dream is, the desire is, will be preceded by the every single day decisions we make that will one day get us to that place. We got to be people that stop talking and we start walking in the direction that God has called us. And so whether that's starting a business, whether that is becoming a foster parent, whether that is a whole new dream altogether, the want is not enough. The everyday decisions have to take us there. That's principle number one that we see in Abram's life. But here's the second piece that is really important for us to understand. We got to be people who learn to what I would say, stand on God's promise. We're people who just simply learn to stand on God's promise. In other words, it's not just kind of enough that we're doing this type of thing. Instead, we can really connect ourselves to the story of God. Here's what God says in Genesis chapter 12, verse 1 through 3. Again, help me out with the highlighted word. It says this. It says, God says to Abram, leave your native country, your relatives, your father's family, and go to the land that I will show you. Look how often that phrase is repeated. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you and make you famous, and you will be a blessing to others. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who treat you with contempt. All families on earth will be blessed through you. What God says 4 times in 3 verses, God says, I will, I will, I will, I will. In other words, Abram, sure, I'm calling you. Sure, I want you to participate, but here's the truth. When it comes to any kind of change, any kind of transformation, it's always made up of 2 things: our participation and God's promise. It's our participation, but it's strongly connected to God's promise. In other words, if God has given you a vision for anything in life, God will help you see that vision through. We're not just left to our own devices to try to figure it out. Instead, God says, I will be with you every single step of the way. What he said to Abram is, I'm asking you to leave, but I want you to know I will never leave you. I'm asking you to go to a distant place, but I want you to know my presence will never be distant from you. I will be with you. It is the number one promise in all of Scripture where God says to his people, I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. I will always be with you. And we can stand firmly on God's promise that if he gives us the vision, he will help see that vision all the way through if we're willing to stand on his promise. We can stand on God's promise of who he is. He's a faithful God. He's a loving God. He's a gracious God. He's a forgiving God. He's a powerful God. God can do things beyond our wildest imaginations. It is our participation, but is firmly grounded in his promise. That's what we see in Abram's life. Again, these powerful principles as we step into the visions and dreams that God has given us is we got to be people who stop talking and start walking, but we got to be people who stand firmly on the promises of who God is and what God is going to do in our life. But the third principle is possibly the most profound. And it's simply this, that we got to be people who just keep going. Just keep going. Again, the heartbeat of this particular series, as we said, that it's the series that we say that we just didn't see it coming. Didn't see it coming. The truth is, with any kind of vision or dream that you pursue in life, there are going to be lots of moments along the way that we'll say that phrase, man, I didn't see that coming. That when it comes to the things that God has us pursue, I promise you, if it's a big enough dream, it is not going to be easy to take the journey to get there. There'll be all kinds of difficulty, hardship, things that will come up that we flat out didn't see coming. And the question becomes, will that knock us off course? Will that cause us to compromise the vision and dream? Or will we have the perseverance and the tenacity that no matter what comes our way, we'll be people who just keep going? Now, as I was studying this particular passage, I can't tell you how many times I've read Genesis chapter 12, but for whatever reason, I had never seen this detail before until I was studying to prepare this message this week. It was like it leapt off the page in a whole new way. I want to share this fascinating detail with us. And so, again, we're going to be in Genesis chapter 12. Look at verse 4. Here's what it says. It says, "So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he set out from..." It's not fair when I give you a word that's an Old Testament word that we don't really know how to pronounce, but it says that he set out from Haran is the name of the place. Quick little insight for you: if you ever are reading Old Testament stuff out loud and you don't know how to pronounce it, just pronounce it with confidence because nobody else knows how to pronounce it either. But he set out from Haran. Here's the question: what in the world was Abram doing in Haran? Again, God called him when he lived where? In Ur. Now, ultimately, his destination was this place called Canaan. It was the promised land. It's where God was ultimately going to take him. And so the journey was supposed to go from Ur to Canaan. But in verse 4 it says he left Haran. Why was he even in Haran in the first place? And that was the detail that I'd never really seen before. I'd always kind of read past it. I've always kind of skipped by it. And so I started asking that question: why is Abram even in Haran in the first place? And the Bible actually answers that question. You just have to go to the previous chapter to find out how Abram found himself in Haran. What we find out in chapter 11 is it wasn't just Abram and his immediate family, it was actually the whole extended family that was invited to participate in this dream that God gave, that they were, as an extended family, invited to go from Ur all the way to Canaan. It was not just Abram and his wife Sarai, it was Abram's father, his name was Terah, it was his nephew Lot. There was a whole family that was supposed to take this journey. But if we back up one chapter, in chapter 11, here's what it says about that. It says, so Terah, again, that's Abram's father, it says, Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, the son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, the wife of the son Abram, and together they set out, again, here's the journey, from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to Canaan. So the whole extended family was supposed to take that journey from Ur to Canaan, but look what it says. I've never seen it. Here's what it says. It says, but when they came to Haran, they settled. How often has that played out in your journey and in my journey? That God has given us a dream, a vision, and because of whatever happened along the way, we end up settling for something short of the ultimate dream. God didn't call Abram to Haran. God called Abram to Canaan. But they settled at one point far short of the vision. They just settled in Haran. Why did they settle in Haran? Now, if you look at some of the details in the text, we find out why they settled in Haran. They settled in Haran because it was actually Abram's father, Terah, that decided that the family should go no further. Now, I don't know exactly what the conversation looked like. My guess is it looked like something like this. You know, we're no longer in Ur. At least we left the original place. We're no longer there. But man, this journey, it's been grueling. It's been tiring. It's been difficult. There are all kinds of things that we just didn't see coming. We've gone far enough. Let's just settle here. And here's what I've discovered. That when it comes to really being able to just keep going and really persevere when things get tough, there are two things that are essential to empower us to just keep going. It's about the voices around us, and it's about the vision within us. And both of those things are incredibly important to just keep going. It's about the voices around us, and it's about the vision within us. The challenge with Abram in his life is there was one voice around him. It happened to be the voice of his dad, and it was the voice around them that caused them to settle somewhere far short of the original vision and dream that God had given us. And the same is true for you and I. It may not be our Father's voice, but the truth is, if the voices around us are more tied to the past where we've been instead of the future of where we're going, there's a high likelihood that we will settle somewhere along the way. We may leave Ur, but we'll settle in Haran. You've heard the old adage a long time ago, show me your friends and I will show you your future. It's incredibly true. Because if we surround ourselves with voices of people who are not interested in hearing the voice of God on a daily basis, if we surround ourselves with people who are half-hearted in their faithfulness, if we surround ourselves with voices that aren't interested in us becoming the fullness of who God has called us to be, we may leave Ur, but we'll settle in Haran. However, if we surround ourselves with voices, not with where we've been, but where we're going, those voices tend to help us rise to levels that we've never been before. They help shape us in ways that we've never been shaped before. They help us become what we've never become before. The same is true about those voices. Voices can diminish where we go, but voices can also inspire us to brand new heights. It kind of reminds me of some movies that were pretty iconic movies as I was growing up as a kid. I grew up as a kid in the 80s and 90s, and there's some great classic movies back from that time period where you kind of have the hero of the movie, but behind every hero, there's a hero maker. There's a voice that's speaking into that hero that helps them become what they would have never become on their own. So let's have a little bit of fun with this. I'll share with you some of these iconic movies. You can help me out identifying who the hero maker is. And so here's the first one. How many remember the movie Karate Kid? Remember this movie? Great movie. And so you got Daniel LaRusso. He's kind of a wussy little kid, of some kind. But he doesn't listen to the voice of Johnny from Cobra Kai. Instead, he listens to the voice of Mr. Miyagi. Wax on, wax off, Daniel-san, right? What a great movie. And Mr. Miyagi helps Daniel become what he would have never become on his own. I think about another iconic movie of that era. Remember Rocky? Rocky Balboa? Great movie. Now, Rocky had somebody in his corner. It was his trainer, sometime pretty hard on Rocky, but nevertheless helped him become what he'd never become on his own. That trainer's name was? Mick. Or Mickey, that's right. Great moment. And there's the speech that Mick gives Rocky that's even replayed in his mind multiple times if you watch the series. That moment where Mick says, "Get back in the ring, you son of a gun." And yes, I did edit that for church. Get back in the ring, you son of a gun, because Mickey loves you, right? What a great moment. Mickey helps him become what he would have never become on his own. I mean, even the great Luke Skywalker needed, I would say Yoda, but we had an argument about it last night that maybe it's Obi-Wan Kenobi, and that's okay too. I just like the little green guy, and so I like to think that that Yoda, not yet baby Yoda, but Yoda, really had something to do with it. I mean, he was this sage, dispensing such wisdom about it. It's not do or do not. There is no try, says Yoda. I mean, it's such great wisdom. So the truth is, behind every hero, there's a hero maker. And so if we're going to be people who are persistent, that we overcome the challenges that come our way, the things that we just flat out didn't see coming, it matters the voices that we place around us. Show me your friends, I will show you your future. And it's not just about the voices around us. It's also about the vision within us. The vision within us. When I talk about the vision within us, here's what I mean about the vision within us. Whatever vision or dream that God has given us, if it's truly a vision from God, likely it's a vision that impacts somebody beyond you. And in other words, we get to be a part of the vision, but God's vision is for something bigger than us. And when that vision is for something that's bigger than us, it can really burn inside of us. It can allow us to really persevere when things get really difficult. If the vision stops with me, if it's only about me, I promise when things get hard, it's very easy to justify, it's just not worth it. I'm just going to settle in Haran. I'm just going to settle for something far shorter. But if the vision gets connected to somebody or something beyond me that's bigger than me, many times it's the fuel that just empowers me to just keep going. That was true for Abram's story. As a part of Abram's story, here's what we find out is God was calling him to leave certain things, but God was promising him an expansion of something that was beyond Abram's wildest comprehension. In other words, basically what God said to Abram, he says, hey, I want you to leave the land that you've known, but I'm going to take you to this new land. I'm going to give you this new land. I'm going to establish an entire nation through you, and this nation will call this particular land home. That's a pretty cool promise. He says, I want you to leave your family, but I'm going to give you a greater family. I'm going to give you so many descendants that they're going to be more numerous than the sand and the seashore and the stars in the sky. He says, I want you to leave your job and your wealth and those things, but I'm going to bless you, and ultimately, I'm going to bless the entire world through you. And so God did ask him to leave things, but what God promised him was something that's far greater than anything that he ever left. But the vision that God gave him was bigger than Abram. Sure, Abram got to participate in the dream. Abraham got to experience the dream, but the dream was much bigger than just Abram. It extended to all of the generations that followed Abram. Here's what it says in Genesis chapter 12, verse 7. That's a little bit about this dream. God's talking to Abram, he says this. He says, to your offspring, I will give this land. In other words, Abram, it is about you, but it's not about you. You get to be a participant in this ultimate dream, but ultimately it's not just for you, it's for all the generations that follow you. This land, this people, this blessing. Ultimately, he's going to bring Jesus through this particular family. That it's connected to you, but it's not just about you. And the truth is, with any great vision that God gives us, any significant world-changing vision that God has given us, it includes us, but ultimately it's not about us. Ultimately, it's bigger than us. Ultimately, the impact is much greater than we can even begin to comprehend. And if we ground our vision and dream into something bigger than ourselves, it gives us the fuel to persevere when things get hard. I'm reminded of this powerful principle just a few months ago. For reasons I can't fully explain to you, I've decided to get into endurance racing over the past couple of years. I've started running marathons. It's kind of a funny thing for me because at the age of 39, I had never probably run more than 2 miles in my entire life. And through a whole series of events, have now found myself running marathons. And over the past couple of years now, I've run 3. Most recent marathon I ran was the Chicago Marathon. Just ran it a couple months ago in the month of October. Now the marathon experience for me, because I'm kind of new to it and I'm so far from being an elite athlete, it is a good experience, it's an exhilarating experience, it's a fun experience, but it's also a torturous experience because, come to find out, 26.2 miles is a really long way. And so, every single marathon I've run, again, I've only done 3, has been the same thing. I've been pretty strong for a while, and then I hit this wall, and it is torture to somehow figure out how to make myself and make my way to the finish line. But nevertheless, I, for whatever reason, continue to sign up for these things. And so as I was approaching the Chicago Marathon, I decided, you know what, I need to do something for a reason bigger than myself. It's not enough just to accomplish a personal goal or to get fit for myself. I need to do something and run for a cause bigger than myself. And so I researched in the Chicago Marathon of some different charities that were represented in the marathon, and I ran across one charity in particular. It's called World Vision. Now, I know World Vision. I'm familiar with World Vision. They're, I believe, the largest philanthropic Christian organization in the world. They're doing some amazing, amazing work around the world. But very specifically, the Chicago Marathon, Team World Vision was running for one particular cause, and that's the cause of clean water efforts in communities around the world. And as I began to learn a little bit more, I think I knew a little bit about clean water efforts, but I began to dive in and try to get a greater level of understanding. And what I understood is there are literally millions of people in the years like 2019, now 2020, that still don't have access to clean water. That's kind of baffling thought to me that in the 21st century, there are people that still don't have access to clean water. And so in these villages and these communities, typically what will happen is the kids in the community will have the job to walk however far the distance is necessary to retrieve water for the family. In many cases, these kids are walking like 6 kilometers to 6 miles in order to retrieve the water for the family. And the challenge is many times this is not even clean water. They're bringing back water that's still full of bacteria. It creates all kinds of disease and hardship in these areas. And there's some areas of our world, literally even today, that the mortality rate is 50% to the age of 5. That 1 out of 2 kids doesn't see their 5th birthday because they don't have one of the most basic needs of humanity, and that of clean water. And I remember learning about that and understanding that and seeing the faces of these kids and thinking, that just shouldn't be. We should do something about that, and frankly, we can do something about it. And so the runners who were running as a part of Team World Vision were committed to raise some money for that particular cause. Every $50 provided clean water for one person for life. And there were almost 2,000 runners in the Chicago Marathon that were running for that particular cause. And those 2,000 runners raised just over $3 million in order to provide clean water for 60,000 individuals for the rest of their life. It was a really compelling thing for me. It was a very compelling cause, and it changed the way I ran that race. The starting grid was the same. Starting grid's it's kind of a fun, it's an exciting, you're kind of amped about what's about to happen, and the starting grid kind of felt very similar to the previous 2 races that I'd run. As I began to get out on the course, I was kind of the same too. I ran fairly strong for about the first, 18 to 20 miles, and then the moment happened. And the moment happened at about mile 20 where my life just shuts down. It's really hard to even articulate what happens in this moment, but like your body breaks down, everything in you wants to stop. You have these thoughts. You ever have like thoughts in your mind that like talk to you? Okay, they are really loud voices at mile 20, just so you know. And those voices are telling you, you're an idiot. What are you doing? Like, why do you do these things? This is stupid. Just go sit on a curb, catch a ride to the finish line. This is absurd. Like, why are you doing this? Why are you putting your body through this? Don't ever do this ever again. Like, those are the voices, that are swirling through you. And at mile 20, this thought occurred to me for the very first time that I had roughly the same distance to the finish line as kids walk every single day to try to retrieve water, sometimes it's not even clean. And it occurred to me that I can cover this distance so that those kids never have to cover that distance for that reason ever again in their life. That was a compelling thought for me. It was a compelling dream for me. Now, let me be really clear. Did it make the rest of that race easy? No. Did it make it less painful? No. But was it the fuel that allowed me to just keep going anyway? You better believe it. And I think in many ways, that plays out in our journey. Whatever it is that God's calling you to, whatever the vision or dream that God births in your heart, I promise there will be things that you don't see coming. And I promise along the way, it will get really hard. There will be challenges. There will be voices that will tell you to stop. Sometimes those voices are within yourself. And if you don't have a vision within you, that's a vision greater than yourself, a why that compels you just to keep steps, one foot in front of the other, that's the fuel that allows us to just keep going. The truth is, never in my life have I had 2020 vision. But again, I'm praying that God gives us a vision for 2020. And I'm praying that that vision takes root in your heart. I pray that it's not just a want or a desire, but that we become people that stop talking and start walking. And we're people that deeply, deeply ground our story and stand strong on the promises that God gives us. And we're people that are willing to persevere with tenacity to just keep going because of the voices around us and because of the vision within us. May the story that God writes in the coming year and beyond be a beautiful, beautiful story in your journey. As we close out our time together, I think it'd probably be amiss if I didn't extend an opportunity to us. And that is, I think with any new year, the things I love about a New Year's, it really is a fresh start, it's a new beginning. I love the fact that there's almost a reset button. And for some of us, I think that what that could mean is surrendering your life to Him for maybe the very first time. That maybe you're kind of at the point in your life that you think, gosh, I need a reset. I need a restart. Here's the good news. We serve a God of second chances. We serve a God of new hopes and new beginnings. And if you've ever wondered what's the best time to become a follower of Jesus? Right now. There's never been a better time than right now. And if you've never surrendered your life fully to Him and received the second chance and the new opportunity that He gives, I want to extend that opportunity to you. It's a free gift that comes from God through Jesus. It's an amazing gift that you can have that fresh start, this new beginning. You can start it literally right now today. For others of us, maybe we've been on that journey, but for whatever reason, and the reason doesn't really matter, we've detoured off that. We've kind of gone off that path, and we know we need to surrender again. We know we need a reset button to start afresh. And so I'm going to say a simple prayer. And if you'd like to, for the very first time, surrender your life to Jesus, or if you'd like to do that again because you feel the need for a new start and a fresh beginning, I just want to encourage you to pray the words of this prayer after me. You can do it out loud. You can do it to yourself, whatever you feel more comfortable with. But if you would just simply bow your heads, close your eyes, and if you'd like to pray this prayer of surrender, I would encourage you to pray the words of this prayer after me. Jesus, thank you for loving me. I believe you died on the cross for my sin. I believe you rose again. Jesus, forgive me for my sin. Give me the gift of eternal life. Help me overcome the challenges I'm up against. I surrender my life to you. In Christ's name. With every head bowed, with every eye closed, if you made that surrender, I want to ask you to do something that may feel a little bit out of your comfort zone, maybe a little bit odd, but if you would just simply acknowledge that decision by just placing your hand in the air. It's just a simple acknowledgement to God, that God, I surrender my life to you. God, I pray for any person that's reaching out to you in this moment. And Father, I just ask they would experience your presence reaching back to them. They'd sense your goodness, they'd sense your grace, they'd sense the new opportunity, this fresh start that you lay before us. Father, we believe that the story ahead is an unwritten story, and God, I just ask that you'd write a masterpiece with our lives. Help us become people who never stop short and settle for something less than the vision and the dream that you've given us. We love you, we thank you, we pray that in your son's name. Amen. Can we give it up for those who made spiritual decisions today? So grateful that you are here at LifePoint this weekend. Thanks for the opportunity for allowing me to be back and to share with you. I think just one thing else needs to be said. Go Hawks. We'll see you next week. Thanks, man.
Did that girl raise her hand?
She did?
Did she?
I don't know.
Oh,
I told everybody to bow their heads and close their eyes.
Even you?
I don't know. It's like